Hello. So today I want to show you a demonstration of our private offering platform. Now, for some context, the goal here was to build a tool that provides funds, startups, offers with the tools that they need in order to maintain compliance when they're selling shares, managing shares, allowing trading on chain. Um, and so I think what we'll do now is I'll do just a demo of the tools for creating and issuing shares, and then managing trading and distributions. Those will be separate videos. Also, for those of you who've seen a demonstration of the prototype version of this, you may notice the interface is a little bit different. We've added tools for like managing organizations, role-based access control for team members, at least for the informational components. And so there's a bunch in here that's set up to really serve the needs of actual professional funds. But today, let's start with creating an offering. So what you do is you select an entity that you want to associate the offering with. And of course, if that entity doesn't exist yet, you can add it. And that's purely informational. It provides context for other features in the system. So you select an entity, you give it a name. We've already created one here, so why waste it? Let's go in. This one is called Seed Round. And this example here is really an example for a startup, a seed round for a startup, but this could be a real estate syndication, this could be a private equity fund, et cetera. So the first step here is to deploy the smart contract. And now for those of you who saw the prototype, there was one smart contract that handled everything: distributions, trading, and the shares themselves. We've broken that into 3 smart contracts. And also we are now on EVM. The original version was on Algorand, but on EVM, we have existing standards like the 1410 security token. That's what we used for shares, modified, but that's what we used for managing shares. But the other advantage to having it as 3 separate contracts is it really represents 3 separate stages of an offering, or at least 3 separate jobs within an offering. So the first one is just being able to create and issue shares. And it usually will be a year before trading is even possible under regulation. And so at that point, you could deploy the trading contract. And then if there happens to be distributions in your type of offering, then there's a contract for that as well. It doesn't make sense to have all of that as one kind of large, unwieldy contract. And so we've broken them into 3 separate ones. So we're on the Sepolia test network here, and we're going to deploy the contract. And that could take a second. So the contract deployment is really a 2-step thing. The first step is actually putting the contract on chain, and that's what we're doing right now. And then let's check the progress of that. Okay, it's deployed. So now we have a contract on chain. We have an address for that contract. Second step is to add this legal text. To basically, we're going to take a hash of it, add the legal text to the smart contract permanently. And the idea there is that this text is what binds, what turns the shares into a legal representation of a share. And put simply, all of this kind of default text really does is it says each token is a valid share. If you have any more questions, please look at the operating agreement, limited partnership agreement, the other documents that define the offering. So basically, its role here is just to tie the tokens to the rest of the offering. And so we're going to sign it. You can see as I type here, it creates a little hash. And then when we click sign, we're publishing that hash to the contract. And unlike our previous contract, this can also accept multiple documents. So you could, if you need to make a modification, for example, to the documents, you could add another one, but you'd still have the previous document that kind of maintains the legal history, which is important for investors to be able to understand exactly what happened. And so now we've deployed a share contract. you can see that now it's possible because we have the share contract. It's now possible to deploy the trading and the distribution contract, but we'll do that later. And let's also add a class of shares. So the contract that we use here has partitions, which basically means classes, right? It's a partially fungible token standard, and so it shares the offering documents so the informational components, but you can have separate classes of shares. So we've added that. Now the next thing we want to do, of course, is actually send those shares to people. But because it's a private offering, it can't just be anybody, right? There's usually a full kind of AML KYC process that happens before somebody can join. And so let's take a link here. This will be a link to the portal, the investor portal side. And we'll create one investor here in this browser, and then we'll do a second one here, because later we're going to want to be able to show how they can trade. Now you'll see that they are not able to see this offering, and the reason is because they're not on the whitelist. And so what they have to do is they have to send you their wallet address, and we will add that. Now, interestingly, you can also add a name and an external ID. Also, we automatically add to the whitelist the address of the person who deployed the contract. So that kind of represents the offering, the offerer's wallet themselves. And in important ways, they also have the ability to interact as an investor, in that they can receive and hold shares kind of on behalf of the offering. So it's important that they're also whitelisted. So they're here. This is the person we just added. Let's add the second person just for fun to the offering. And so we've provided, I'm not filling them out, but we've provided these fields to add a name and an external ID to allow the manager to effectively track who is receiving shares, who the participants are. But we've built this in such a way where we as a company don't have any private information of the investor. In fact, you'll notice that the investors themselves don't even have, let's just see if that's still pending. Yes. The investors themselves don't even have accounts. They just connect with a wallet. It's a wallet only experience, which is great for a few reasons. One is it's one fewer accounts that the investor has to have. But the fact that we don't hold any private information about them goes a long way in terms of just satisfying the compliance needs of our customers. It's their offering. They control the smart contract. The only kind of people that we see in the system are employees of the offering, right? The managers. Okay, so we've added these two investors. Compared to the prototype, we've also added this whole information page. Of course, there's not that much information at this point. But now you can add things like the jurisdiction of the investor, name and ID. You can still add, name and external ID. You can still add here. It shows the number of shares. And then when we do distributions and any kind of transactions, those also show up, the ones that are related to that investor. So now that we've added them, let's send some shares around. Select the recipient. Let's send them to this guy. And the price per share, this is based on what we set when we created the offering. It just asks for kind of a default price. And that's what it uses as the basis. But this, of course, can change. And then the currency. So these two refer to the price and currency used to purchase the shares. They don't have any mechanical function in this step because we're just sending shares. But from an information standpoint, it's important that the offerer be able to document how much money was paid for those shares and in what currency they were paid. So what we've done here is basically just added an informational field. Let's send 40 shares to this person. One thing to point out here is you can actually add classes of shares in this process, but of course you can select which class of shares you want to send when you're doing the initial offering. Okay, great. So we have sent the shares. So this investor now has 40 shares. If we go to their interface, they've also been added to the offering, so they can now see their right. So here they can see their 40 shares. They see the value of those shares. And here you'll notice that buying and selling is not enabled. That's because we haven't set up the trading contract yet. When we do, there will be a button here that lets them post offers. So those are the main sort of functions. I think it's probably useful to show, I guess, first, that agreement that was published with the share contract that can be downloaded here by anyone, including the investors. They can do that. Also, we have tools. In fact, let's do this one. So we've also, for compliance reasons, we've added a whole set of tools for transfers and clawbacks. And so this basically just lets a manager force a transfer of shares from one holder to any other whitelisted holder, right? So like, let's say we want to move all 40 shares. Now, if we want to remove this person from the whitelist, they can't have any shares. So we have to remove all their shares. So let's do that. And it's important, the first time somebody does this, the wallet that's doing it has to be added as an operator of the share contract. So this is actually a two-step thing, but only once. So let's finish setting the operator and then force the transfer. Okay, and we can see a record with the transaction hash of that forced transfer. And now we can remove the person from the whitelist. And we're really trying to record the transaction hashes of basically everything that happens in the offering. And the value of that is it allows a really kind of robust auditing process where the auditor can use the Block Explorer to sort of confirm any of the information they find. Here we maintain a list of the approvals and revocation of somebody's whitelist status. So it's possible, of course, that they could be approved and then removed and then approved again. Obviously, that wouldn't be typical, but we want to record all those events. So that is the demonstration of just the basic creating and sending of shares, and I guess a little bit investor management of our private offering platform.